All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our 19th episode of Friday's PiñaTalks. My name is Adam English. I'm here with our CEO, Christopher Abadi, and I'd like to warmly welcome our guest today, Tarja Wiklund. So, if you see on social media, I use the term Renaissance woman, and I don't use this term very loosely whatsoever. So, she is Finland's Industry 5.0 ambassador. She's a startup advisor, entrepreneur, psychotherapist, and leadership mentor. She wears many, many hats and she makes it look very, very easy to say the very least. So, some of her specific accolades include Saito University's industry mentor and facilitator, and this is at the globally recognized Mental Wellness Society. So, the theme of this episode is going to be compassion in the tech industry. Now, why exactly is this crucial? And especially as it pertains to the betterment of society. And I can certainly see out there that is a theme that is not really discussed: compassion and tech. Now, society is moving at an ever so fast pace. And at the same time, too, we're dealing with more and more complicated problems. And it also seems like uh, society itself, maybe technology is getting better, but are people getting better? Are people getting healthier mentally and physically? So, Tarja, again, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. I wanted to know, what does compassion mean to you? And how does it apply to tech, especially with how fast things are today?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. As we talked earlier, my passion is to bring more compassion to the world. I believe that is what we need at the moment now and in the future as well. Because what I believe, we all are interconnected. Whatever you do there affects me here. And especially in tech, when the pandemic has caused a lot of issues with, work remotely, having distance, and social connections are changing at the moment. So I think it's really, really important that we recognize, first of all, that we are here for each other. I truly believe in the power of connectedness. And compassion for me is first of all, it's the ability to stop, pause, see. If
Right.
we just pass by each other, we don't notice that the other person could be suffering. What is the other person doing? Is he having some issues? First of all, it needs that we stop, we pause, we notice each other. And I think, especially during the pandemic, this has been an issue because we have worked remotely, we have worn masks, we have been socially distancing. And there's lots of suffering occurring everywhere in the world, not only the pandemic, but the pandemic of loneliness.
Hmm.
And I think what we need is to create that feeling that we are here together. First of all, stop, look at the other human being.
Right.
What is he going through? Try to think and try to feel. And for me, compassion is the willingness to alleviate that suffering, wherever it comes from. It can be just, act of paying attention, listening. It doesn't necessarily mean that you give advice or,
Right.
you do something. You just are there for the other human being. I think this is the power of the connection. Like we're here now together, which I'm very
Right.
happy. Yes.
Yeah. Likewise. So, would it would it be fair to say, uh, perhaps in your opinion as a professional and as also as an individual, so some of these things like mask wearing, some of these things
Mm-hmm.
like even working remotely, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even some of these things like doing most of our communication through messengers and apps. Would you say this has almost reduced people's ability to have compassion? And it may not be an individual's fault per se. It just may
Mm-hmm.
be kind of a lot of these things that are almost conditioning people now.
Yeah, I really been thinking about that a lot because just simple, when we meet each other in real life, we
Yes.
pay attention to gesture, we pay attention even to the smell, how he wears his body and so on. This is all missing when we interact with,
Right.
uh, online. But on the other hand, it can be also of benefit because we are able to connect with all these people around the world. On the other hand, it creates a world where everybody can be connected. I think this is the other part of it. But the other part of it is certainly that when we interact, when we in real life, meet, we might hug, we might, feel each other. And
Right.
it's completely different when you do it online. And especially I've been thinking about children. How do they raise? Because
Right.
smile, for example, if you think
Right.
of a baby, how essential is to see somebody smiling at you. You can see it
Yes.
in the eyes, but it's different with the masks. It's different. How do we connect without this ability to really like sense the other person? I can sense you and I can sense Chris,
Right.
but in a
Right.
different way than we would be in the same room.
That, you made me think about something right now. Perhaps compassion is linked to our five senses: our sight, our smell, our ability to hear,
Yes.
and feel, and things like that. So, would it be fair to say maybe compassion actually starts there? Because I guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe as humans evolved to kind
Mm-hmm.
of adapt and
Mm-hmm.
figure out our world here, I think maybe making those connections probably just start there. A handshake or a hug, or smelling
Yes.
somebody's fragrance or cologne or something, or
Mm-hmm.
seeing just the little, mini
Yeah.
nuances with expression in the face and things like that.
Absolutely. I think we all have those seeds for compassion in our genes. We
Yes.
wouldn't have survived as species without compassion, without helping each other, without
Right.
being connected. Baby doesn't grow, everybody knows, without, to be a full human being without interaction. And I
Right.
think I love the idea of actually, I never thought it that way. We use all the five senses all the time.
Yeah.
And this is missing something. This is missing the essential part of, or I wouldn't call it energy, in that sense of woo woo, but I would call it, we radiate something when we meet each other. And
Yeah.
this is really important
Is
for the,
the aura is
yes.
different. When you go
Right.
into a room and everybody's happy, you can feel that everybody's happy. When you go into a room and it's somber
Yes.
or awake or something, you can feel that everybody is down and out.
Mm-hmm.
And this interaction here, we can see each other, but we don't have all of those other senses that are, helping re- paint the whole picture of what's going on. We're only just getting the visual. We're not getting you
Yes.
know, the sense of the smell and the touch and all those other senses that come into it. We don't have that. And I come from a background of hospitality, and one of the things that I learned at the Ritz Carlton is to enliven all five senses, because that's what it really is about. You come in, they'd have an apple on the thing for you. They had fresh flowers. They had these things that were subconsciously there that you didn't even realize, because they were trying to enliven the five senses as you walked in. The music playing in the background, it was all there to create an ambiance for you. Even though it was subconscious, you felt that luxury feel of, because you had all of your senses enlivened. And yeah, like you're saying, with even though we're connecting with people we may have never connected with, it's only part of the connection. It's not the full in-person connection. So I completely agree with you. And the mask wearing with the children is something that I'm strongly against here. Children need to be able to pick up those social cues and read one another, and they're being taken away in class. And my son particularly, he has behavioral problems, and if his teacher has a mask over her face and is trying to recommend him, he doesn't know if she's smiling or if she's mad. Really, he's so very young to get those social cues already. So
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with a lot of what you've said so far. And yeah, just wanted to kind of interject there for a minute.
No, those social cues are very important. I have a son as well, so he's 4, but a lot of the interaction, whether he's playing at the park or on play dates, for the longest time, I guess depending on how early it was in the pandemic involved, he had to wear a mask, and especially, even at preschool. So understanding or being able to see social cues.
Mhm.
I think that might be one of the primers to kind of start that connection with somebody. The smile,
Mhm.
whether this person is smiling or scolding, or even I think the wrinkles around the eyes. The shape of the eyes and how you're talking at the same time. Those really indicate and communicate a lot. So for you, Tarja, you wear many different hats. So being a psychotherapist and also in the world of tech, what do a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders tell you when they come out to you and they're trying to, you know, when they're dealing with I guess what I'm asking is when they're trying to figure out certain problems, whether it's with their company or maybe some of their, maybe they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on with culture right now. Because obviously this affects companies, it affects employees. So when people reach out to you for advice, what are a lot of the questions they come to you with, especially now with the pandemic and the lockdowns?
I would say first that a big issue is communication, because most of the time, it all starts with communicating with each other.
Right,
How do we, what do we radiate? What do we give into the communication? How well are we prepared to have a other human being in our own space? I would say that
right,
in terms of, really accepting and paying attention and listening. I think attention span is so short nowadays.
right,
you know Especially in the meetings, this happens very often. Somebody starts, has an important topic, and everybody's just watching their phones. So
right.
first of all, the missing focus is needed in everything we do. Whether we are trying to be compassionate, you need to focus on the other human in order to see that he's or she is suffering. And no
Right.
matter if we try to actively listen, we have to pay attention. We have to focus on the other person. And I think all of us have been in a situation where we really feel that the other person is not focusing on us. You know how it hurts.
Sure.
And it brings lots of issues with the communication when we don't even listen. We listen to answer, but we don't listen to understand. There's a difference.
Wow. So, you know, now this is making me think of a lot of certain nuances and maybe questions to ask. So,
Mhm.
it seems to me that even the shortened attention span may also be linked to a lack of compassion. Because I think if there is such a shortened attention span,
Mhm.
there's obviously that connection is not being made. And if there is a shortened attention span, you're probably just thinking about yourself. Most likely you're thinking about, oh, okay, what's going on with my profile on social media, what's
Yes.
how many likes or comments did I like. So
Mhm.
it seems to me the shortened attention span maybe more connected with a lack of compassion and more of a sense of, I don't know if it's just self-centeredness or self-absorption,
Mhm.
but it seems like the shortened attention span might be kind of closer to that. Would you say?
Yes. And also, the lack of real connection, because many people get their feedback, like in real interaction, we get feedback. You look at me, I look at you, I sense
Right.
you, I feel you, I communicate with you. But during the pandemic, many people have had to isolate. So, in
Right.
terms of getting that feedback, we might look to the social media. Oh, I get so many likes. Oh, somebody like or
Right.
commented on my post. So we are, born to be in connection with each other. And
Right.
if it's somehow restricted, it's easy to find that in, for example, Facebook, whatever,
Sure.
LinkedIn. And you reflect yourself, like I mirror you, you mirror me.
Sure.
What you
Right.
see in me, is part of you. And what I
Right.
see in you is part of me and Chris. So we create, that kind of reflections every time. And everybody wants to be liked. Who
Sure.
doesn't want to be liked? Who wants to be the lonely, person in the room? Nobody. So
Sure.
in this time, I think the social media has really increased. And getting that reflection, getting that mirroring from social media is not always such a good thing, because then, you might be focusing on that. People take photos from their meals, for example, when they
Right.
go out to eat. and
Yeah.
they'll put that, they see a lot of effort, which is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just say that, instead of eating, paying attention to the other person that they are eating with, they take a photo, they put it in Instagram or whatever. Oh,
Right.
such a lovely meal. Then they, meanwhile they're eating, they're looking, oh, somebody commented, and then they like.
Right, right. And speaking of the theme of loneliness, so
Mhm.
what does loneliness do to the human mind? And when it comes to tech, so combining loneliness with tech,
Mhm.
how does that make loneliness worse? I guess that's what my question would be. Because it seems like on one hand, you can access the world, whether it's through
Mhm.
Google, whether it's through Facebook and Twitter, but it
Mhm.
seems like it doesn't make people feel more more part of a community. So I wanted to know your thoughts on that. Does tech make people feel lonelier, generally speaking?
Well, I would say it has two effects. On the other hand, let's put on the positive first.
Sure.
I would probably not be here without tech.
Right.
Sitting with Chris and you and talking this nice talk and getting connected with all these different people, having collaboration globally at the
Right.
moment. Without tech, it wouldn't be possible. I would have to travel to New York to meet you and
Sure.
talk there and make a
Sure.
video and then, share it in some other platform. So, on
Right.
the other hand, it makes very easy to connect with different types of people from all over the world, which is great. That can be, the helping hand for somebody who is alone, like
Sure.
elderly people who are, alone at home and can't really meet anyone. It's
That's a
very
very good
helpful.
point.
They can make a video call and get connected. But on the other hand, it can't really fully replace the real life interaction. And our brains are wired so that we are meant to be connected with each other. Our brain
Right.
has those cells that, are made for connection, are made for understanding others, because this is how children learn. This is how babies become fully human beings. They mirror, they reflect the, how adult responses.
Right.
So there is connection. We can't, isolate. And if we only focus on, if your only connection is in tech life, or even worse, I think, would be like sending messages, because message is missing the visual also.
Sure.
It's easy, it's handy, but if you only send messages, there's a big like missing in that interaction. Like, you can see me, I see how your hands go and how I behave and how I am, but with text message you only read the message, it's only visual. So
Sure.
it gives you more like possibilities for misunderstanding. On the other hand, it's very good equipment. Like, if you want to remember something, you send a text message and then you receive it, and okay, it's there, you can go back to it.
Right.
But I think loneliness is in terms of, if you feel, I don't think it's especially the tech, or maybe it's more like you feel lonely. It's the quality of the connections, I think. If you
That's a
have
good point.
already established the connection with someone, imagine you and I have been friends for a long time.
Sure.
Then I think if I would call you with video call, we would continue our friendship. We would feel each
Right.
other, we would know. But if you, kind of like never met anyone you speak with or you interact with, it's
Right.
different. You don't actually know how they behave in real life. You can talk for someone for several months with video, and then you go and see him, and it's completely different person,
Sure.
because it gives your kind of imagination more possibilities, and you can also have that sense of, behaving differently when you're in a video call than you do in real life.
Right. So it does come down to that, and I think that conceptualizes it quite well. I think you're about as connected or as lonely based on the quality of your
Yes.
relationships, it seems. So, and it seems like
Yes.
maybe technology could either make you feel more connected,
Hmm.
especially from a convenience point of view, or make you feel even lonelier, especially
Hmm.
especially when it comes to expectations. Like, let's say if you're
Yeah.
connecting with somebody, like you said with your example, on video for many months, and you meet that person in real life, and it is way different than probably what you had in mind. So, kind of getting a little bit into your background, what made you want to become a psychotherapist? How did that journey, how did that professional path start for you?
Well, I must say I've always been very interested in how people define their selves and how they define their lives. As
Yes.
a child, I was, always with my mother where she was working, and she had a job where she met a lot of different kinds of people. So I was there, and by the time 70s, I'm born in the 70s, kids were supposed to be quiet and sit on the couch. So I said, well, I've been sitting on the couch and being quiet first 10 years and listening, just paying attention
Sure.
and listening to different stories, and that always fascinated me. And after that, I worked in many different fields in high-tech company. I worked in youth prison. I worked with homeless people. And
Wow.
I always thought that, this identifying problems as, for one individual. If we identify, okay, he's just behaving badly without seeing the bigger perspective, without seeing the community he lives in, without seeing that, past, not meaning that you are not responsible. No, I don't mean that. I mean that the circumstances that created someone to be the person he is
Right.
or she is. So that really fascinated me. So I wanted a systemic approach. So I studied to become a family therapist, psychotherapist. And then
Sure.
I was thinking, well, this can be very well adapted into the organizations because organizations are a bit like family, they're systems too, and they
Sure.
interact with each other and they create meaningful connections. They have communication, they have shared values, or at least they should have, and they have a special culture.
Right.
Every organization has its own culture. So I started to study administration. So this is where one path leads to another if you
Right.
remain open. So it really started interest me, how can we create those places where people feel safe, psychologically safe, being listened to, being respected, no matter where you are. We
Right.
all have that need to be recognized, to be heard, to be appreciated.
Right.
And if we can, in interaction, in our communication, bring that feeling, bring that, sense to someone that, okay,
Right.
I'm here for you. I listen to you. I don't necessarily accept everything you do, but I at
Right.
least say it in respectful way.
Right.
Then we have huge issues solved. So, so I was thinking for me, compassion has always been the key to creating the real connection. Coming
Right.
from that non-judgmental point of view, really like paying attention, trying to understand and trying to do something, at least be there for the person for a second.
Sure.
It has huge effect. I truly
Yeah.
believe in the power of that. No matter where you work, no matter what you do.
Right. And I think with your background, so working with the homeless in a youth prison, for instance, like a juvenile center, which is probably
Mhm.
what we would call it here,
Mhm.
I guess it would be fair to say there are probably common problems between those two populations, the
Mhm.
homelessness. And in
Mhm.
fact, you could say children and teenagers, young adults going through the juvenile system. In fact, one may feed the other, probably
Mhm.
in many cases too. Maybe
Mhm.
some people who were in the juvenile system ended up becoming homeless, and maybe some children who started off as homeless also went into the juvenile system. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think in many cases, and I worked a long time in child protection. You see
Sure,
those families, they, come from different generations. The same problems, the same issues arise. As long
sure,
as no matter how much you want to change your habits, how much you want. When your child is born, for example, you want to get the new opportunity. You want to give him completely different than maybe if you come from
right,
that kind of circumstances. But when the situation comes, it triggers us. It triggers us to behave exactly the same way because that is the only way those people know how to behave.
right,
And
right,
if for example, I think even helpful is to, you know, show them a bit different example, because everybody can think themselves.
Right.
We all can think for ourselves, okay, she's listening to me, she's paying attention, she respects me. And if you get that feeling ever, it can be teacher, it can be a colleague, it can be anyone. If you get
Right.
that, like somebody's respecting me, somebody's evaluating me.
Sure. Yeah. So it would seem to me anyway that there is also probably a lack of compassion with some of these families, and it may stem to generational problems. That could be drug
Hmm.
or alcohol use, it could be domestic violence, it could be a whole multitude of things. And it seems
Hmm.
it seems like these things end up replaying themselves over over generations. And I wanted to know whether when you dealt with children or young adults in the juvenile system and the homeless, was a lot of it simply they really just wanted somebody to listen to them, like as far like when you would interact with either of these groups, was that a lot of it, they felt like they were not being heard?
I think it's the same issue no matter where you work. If you work in high-tech company, we all
Sure.
want to be recognized. We all want our voice to be heard.
Sure.
And just, I think I truly believe in the power of that, just being there, listening, and having that intention of alleviating that suffering, no matter where it comes from. It can be, I'm not being heard, I'm not respected, I'm not giving the opportunities the other ones are. I don't, or it can be skillfulness as well,
Right.
like, you know, I can pay attention, I can listen to you, I can give you an example. It's like a good leader. If you want
Right.
something to happen in the organization, if you have values, and you don't live with those values can go to garbage.
Sure. And what I always wanted
It's
to,
not in
oh,
a,
sorry.
yeah, paper. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, no, continue by all
No,
means.
no. It's not something we do on a paper. It's something we do in real life, in every interaction, in every act we do. We choose our intention.
Right.
And when I was making my master's, I did it about compassionate and servant leadership. And I interviewed quite a few people about, when they have experienced compassionate workplace. Oh
Right.
my goodness. I had an hour, for them. But everybody was telling so much that it took me like 2 hours, because they kept on telling, and then this happened and
Right.
this happened. And it has a huge effect. Imagine you go to workplace and somebody greets you, somebody says, "Hi, how are you today?
Sure.
Can I do something for you?" And you know that, if I have some issues, I can go and talk.
Right.
Even that
Right.
knowing is an act of compassion. If you're able to, give that sense to someone that he's always welcome to talk to you,
Right.
that
And
is an act of compassion. Yes.
yeah, and I wanted to know too, so why is it that, let's say, in some places, and maybe in even some cultures in some areas of the world, why why is there, I guess, a perceived weakness if you're
Hmm.
a compassionate person? Like,
Yes.
why is that perceived also as a weakness at the same time too? Because I can imagine here in the U.S. or even in other countries, if you're the type of man or woman, and let's
Hmm.
say you're kind of warm and you're compassionate, others in the company or even outside will perceive that as a weakness instead of a strength. They'll see, like, okay, this person is
Yes.
showing vulnerability, so let's try to compete and let's get what that person has instead, so to say. I always wondered that.
Thupten Jimba, he's the translator of Dalai Lama. He talks about those fears of compassion.
Right.
We are afraid that if we are shown vulnerable, if we are shown that we are kind to each other, that people take advantage on us, or they think we are
Right.
weak. This is one of the basic fears we have, like, and it's. I think it has to do with the gender too, because in the past, male were considered like action oriented. Males can take action. They don't pay attention to emotions, because emotion disturb, and then they go and they make
Right.
wise decision with their cognitive mind. But actually, our brains are wired in that way that nothing is done without our emotion. Our, whatever we do, whatever we, interact with or make a decision, everything needs our emotion because emotion has important message. It's
Sure.
about those skills are not so appreciated, I think, because they are
Right.
considered as feminine qualities.
Sure.
And so I think it's kind of like burden from the past. But for me, what I think of compassion, it's against injustice.
Sure.
And
Got it.
and in that terms, it's a strength. It doesn't mean you accept everything like, oh, I'm being so compassionate leader. I listen to my employees 8 hours a day and get nothing done. No,
Right.
of course. Yes, you're goal
Mhm.
oriented as well. But you have the ability to really pay attention to the suffering and trying to alleviate that. And for me, in organizational level, I would consider that also, when people are not being heard, they
Right.
hurt. They
Right.
don't do their best. Nobody does its best when you feel you're not appreciated, you're not noticed. You go, you do your daily task, but that's it. Then you
Yeah.
go home and you're like, I don't care. But if you feel like somebody, comes to you and, hey, how can I help you to make this, work better? How
Sure.
can I be of help so you can do your work better? Do you have any ideas? I heard one story of a big company CEO, and she was telling me, like, oh, I was walking in the corridor, I saw this cleaning lady, and I was thinking about, okay, I listened to her. So I said, hello, how are you today? Is there anything, you would think of at the work that would be beneficial for your work so you
Sure.
could do it better, or anything you would change in this organization if somebody would ask? And she said, okay, I have this, I was always been wondering, why do you keep those mailboxes there? Because when the mailman comes, and then can you do it in a different way? And the
Right.
CEO was like, I never thought, because it was difficult for her to clean those places.
I see.
And yeah, but it's like, we don't listen because everybody has wisdom. We just don't pay attention. We pay too much attention to hierarchy, but everyone in the organization is important. Everybody has a voice. But how often do we really listen to voices? Because there can be a huge difference.
Right.
Everybody has some, from their perspective, and this is missing in organizations. We might have the CEO very well trained in strategy, finance, you know all those skills that we get in leadership training.
Right.
But when we come to listening to other people, their wisdom, there might be really a weak point because they have this idea, they have this whole picture, they want to, follow their line. And, even simple improvements make people feel like, okay, I'm listening, I heard my work is important. And it can be of benefit for the whole organization.
Yes.
So compassion has this fierce side. It
Right.
doesn't accept injustice. It doesn't accept, that people are not treated equally. It
Right.
stands against those qualities. So for me, it's an action-oriented practice. You do something to alleviate the suffering, but suffering can be considered as, not being inclusive, having
Right.
racial issues, having gender issues,
Sure.
whatever. So in that term, it's really a power. It's not like
Right.
something weak. It's the strength of the character. And we all know when we feel that. We all know
Right.
when somebody treats us compassionately. We
Right.
remember that.
Absolutely. I was wondering too, especially because you're in this dual world of psychotherapy and tech. So, do women entrepreneurs and female executives do they ever confide in you? And what I'm wondering is this, because it seems like a lack of compassion is rewarded as well, even among female
Mhm.
leaders as well. So if you're a kind of like the Margaret Thatcher type of CEO,
Mhm.
you know, those type of leaders, it seems, get the attention in like Fortune magazine or some of these other publications. And for me, it's like there has to be some sort of internal struggle, man or woman. There has to be some sort of internal struggle if you're wired that way after a period of time. So I was wondering if you've ever had those kind of conversations.
Yes, yes, I do.
Oh,
And I
okay.
think it's that we all have to trust our wholeness. It's like yin
Right.
and yang. It's
Right.
like, we are connected only when we can be connected with our emotions. And we know all this, it's very much evaluated still that, you
Sure.
can make rational decision, you just follow the strategy. But we all know it doesn't bring really, in the end, good results. And you can
Sure.
think compassion also as a key value, I would say, maybe in a
Sure.
society like our Nordic countries. Our
Yes.
values are based on, compassion. We have equal, access to, for example, universities. It's for
Right.
free. Healthcare is almost for free. All those basic services in order to reduce the possibility that people who don't have money don't have access to education, they don't have access to healthcare.
Right.
So it's kind of like a value in the bigger level also, if you
Yeah.
think, how the societies, how countries are structured. So it can be it at that level already. And that was created, this system was created a long time ago, and it has benefits. Our, education system is very good. And
Right.
nobody can say that, it brings all the talent possibility to educate themselves
Right. And
without
I
depending on that, how your parents or what kind of area you come from or what school you go to, or if you have money for the school or universities. So,
right. And that's it's fascinating you bring that up. I will, no system is perfect, but it does seem like the Nordic model of education and healthcare has produced great benefits that really are not
mhm.
seen in other countries. So, from where you are in Finland, what do you think is lacking in, let's say, the English speaking world when it comes to our system? And I think it's a very fair question to examine because, you know, let's face it, if you look at the numbers, you look at between Sweden, Norway, and Finland, a lot of these numbers they do perform better in, as far as
Mhm.
healthcare, as far as education, and in fact, even as far as happiness as well. So, from where you're sitting, where do you think we drop the ball in the United States, or in the UK, or in Canada, or Australia? What do you think is missing in the English speaking world when it comes to society and how to create
Mhm.
maybe a healthier or happier society?
Well, I would say, first of all, the equal possibilities are created by the system because it is important to do your share. But
Sure.
people are not born equal. They
Right.
come from different circumstances, different financial situations, different backgrounds. So what the system can do is to make those differences a bit less. So
Sure.
that no matter, where you're raised from, it doesn't require that you have, you know, 10 works and then you can pay your fee.
Sure.
No, it is all financed by the state, and also the health issues, because I know, I heard from many Americans that, the it's most expensive healthcare system in the world, and it's most private,
Right.
and it's still most inefficient.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that money necessarily brings efficiency. It doesn't mean it
Right.
brings good quality. It can, but it also can become that greedy thing, because
Right.
those companies, they want money from everything they use. Like,
Sure.
if you're covered with something and then they ask money for that, you take
Right.
one blood test and it's money. And
Right.
if you and then you call perhaps the insurance company, ask, can I make one more just for the sake of security? And
Sure.
then they pay. But in terms of, really creating that kind of environment where people are not based on the money, because I
Right.
think the value of people is not depending on the money. But if
Right.
you create that system of inequality accessing to those basic services, it brings lots of tension in the society. It brings black
Right.
and white thinking. And I
Right.
think modesty, I think Finnish people are rather modest.
Okay.
They don't like to show off
Interesting.
like, okay, I have this and this and this, and I don't have to be the biggest fish in the pond. I'm just one
Sure.
fish among the others. And I think this has really big impact on how we think and how we want to behave and what kind of values we bring in front. Because I think, we can say like, oh, you can do it. I have been doing it. I came from the poor family and I rise up to the top.
Sure.
But how can we say that to others? Because we don't know the circumstances, what they are
Sure.
facing. And it's not about being the biggest fish in the pond, I would say. It's about being in that pond together.
Right. And I think that's great. And I think modesty is a good character trait to have. And in fact, I think in many circumstances, actually a healthier one is as well. Perhaps you're less maybe self-absorbed per se, as far as being concerned with the biggest fish versus just simply, okay, I'm a
Mhm.
fish here. Let's see what we can do here. Let's see what I can do here. But let's see if how I can work with other people, so to say. So I think that's great, and I think that's very interesting. And I certainly got to learn about Finland's, I guess maybe character for modesty. I actually think it's a very healthy character, character trait to have. So thank you for that. I was wondering, so in your professional journey, how did you end up being Finland's Industry 5.0 ambassador? So, that's definitely a nice ribbon, to say the very least, to have on your resume and CV. It's very impressive. So I'm wondering, how did you end up getting there?
Well, I was active in LinkedIn and I got in contact with that founder of that, and I was really fascinated the way he represented that. And last 2 weeks, I was participating in this climate reality project leadership training,
Sure.
and I found those, issues, they are urgent. We can't postpone forever. But in order to bring that available to everyone, because it's very easy to say to people who don't have money, you can't consume.
Right.
You
Right.
know, you don't buy plastic things, don't buy this, and buy a new car. But in order to bring that really effective, I think this is what we need, because it's not like, I want to be the biggest fish in the pond. I eat the rest of the fishes or to become bigger.
Sure.
It's about having that space because it's an ecosystem. And we
Right.
too are, in terms of, I think, what somebody does in India, for example, like if I would have something like a mouse,
Right.
somebody has made these parts in some other part of the world.
Right.
And somebody has put them together and brought it to here to Finland. And now I buy it in the shop and I go there and I say, and so we all are interconnected. When we think of something, if we lack one resource from somewhere, the whole system will stop.
Right.
And I would consider it reasonable to think that we are all on this boat together. People who are living in those areas where climate change, for example, is really affecting the most, they will have to move somewhere.
Right. And
So we need to think globally. I think instead of thinking like, okay, this is my little, you know, piece of the world. Like in Finland, we don't necessarily notice those signs so easily because it's not affecting, like we don't have like
right.
tornadoes or whatever.
Right.
So we
Wow.
think we have time, but the time is today. The time today to be compassionate. I would consider it as a act of
Yeah.
compassion to think, the whole world, to think of the globe in every
Yeah.
choice we do, whatever we can. Not saying that putting that pressure, like, you have to. No, having that intention of, being of help to others. I think this
Yeah.
is the, real meaning of life. I
Wow.
think we are here together. I think we are
Yeah.
here and,
Yeah. I
creating,
agree.
that connection.
Well, it seems like if we were to use the example of the fish in the pond, and let's say maybe the path to becoming the bigger fish involves
Mhm.
maybe consuming smaller fish. Maybe in the end, that might not be the best model. There will be another fish to consume that bigger fish as well. And it seems like if you're able to be the fish that can adapt, so to say,
Mhm.
then you can have compassion. Perhaps you can work with other fish
Mhm.
to protect yourselves. Each fish can rely on the next. so to
Yes.
say, versus just being simply the biggest fish. Because then what
Mhm.
happens when that fish encounters even a much larger fish, so to say? So
Yes.
perhaps collaboration is much better than per se just consumption and just competition for
Yes.
itself, in of itself, to say the least.
Yes, you said it perfectly. I really think so because then, also, if we have certain amount of food and
Right,
there comes always the same fish who eat them and then the rest of the fish dies, are they left for?
right,
We need all these people. We need all these fishes in the pond. We need everyone.
right,
And for our sakes, we have those people who have not participated in creating the climate crisis are
right,
suffering the most.
right, right. And
So
as far
that's in terms of social justice as well.
Yeah, and as far as the climate crisis and global warming, uh, how do you feel those problems also affect things like happiness?
Mhm.
How do those even affect things such as resources or compassion? Because I do feel a lot of these things are interconnected. And I know maybe in Finland you say people there feel like they have more time. Whereas let's say if you look at the United States, we have tornadoes, we have hurricanes and things like that. Would it be fair to say that the global warming and the global climate crisis, this is going to affect people's probably ability to be compassionate, or at least people's ability to be happy? I'd imagine that affects resources, it affects time, it affects so many things. I kind of want to know your thoughts on maybe how the, I guess, global climate crisis kind of affects this
Mhm.
umbrella of things in our society.
I think what really affects our happiness is that we feel disconnected and we feel that we are not able to do something.
Sure.
And this is, like in every situation, this is how we get burnout. This is how we get
Right.
emotional distress because we feel there is an urge. We feel that there's pain. There's happening, those terrible things are happening all around the world.
Sure.
But if we stay in that feeling and if we, constantly like feel like, okay, I feel, oh, I'm very anxious, but I'm not doing something.
Sure.
This is the difference with compassion and empathy. Empathy feels, but compassion is the willingness, the intention to
I
alleviate the
see.
suffering.
Right.
So when we are capable, I think this is very important aspect of happiness. We all know, when we do something for someone, it makes us happy too.
Right.
Imagine you pass, in the street or in the organization, you see someone and then you say, can I be of help? And I help you with this. And you, for example,
Right.
carry somebody's bag. And you see he gets happy or she gets happy. And you
Right.
get happy too. It activates the brain works
Yeah.
related to happiness. So when we do something, when we are not just watching or thinking, when we really have that intention and what we can do, we do. It
Right.
doesn't mean that you have to stress out, you have to be anxious, because that's not usually the very healthy way to get things done.
Sure.
When you're anxious, you get kind of nervous. Your sympathetic nervous system activates, and then you're in that. I must do something.
Sure.
It's a good response if car is coming, and you're in the road. Like okay, I step
Yes.
out.
Right.
But when you feel like those cars are coming from when there is not that kind of threat, our same system responses and we get anxious and we don't, we react. So we are constantly kind of stressed out.
Right.
But when we feel like, okay, I can go away, this is not an actual threat at the moment, but there is
Right.
something that needs to be done and I can do my share, no matter how small. Even if you pour your friend a cup of coffee,
Sure.
even when you go to shop and you choose the more eco-friendly, you feel happier
Yeah.
because you have your intention, which
Right.
is compassion, which is kind. You want to do
Yeah.
good. I
Right.
think this is what is lacking if we're just trying to constantly be the biggest fish in the pond, if we go back to that
Right.
metaphor. Because when you're not paying attention, but when you really feel connected with someone and somebody helps you out, it's amazing.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems like if everybody, let's say if all the fish in the pond, or at least the fish that you are able to cooperate with, if you all are eating
Mm-hmm.
just what you need, you could
Mm-hmm.
probably all maximize your ability. And I think if, let's say, if you're the biggest fish, there's probably a lot of problems or maybe even a lot of threats you won't
Mm-hmm.
see. You know, you
Yeah.
might be too comfortable, maybe too arrogant, too cocky. You're not going to be
Yes.
able to really see what's beneath you, or maybe not
Yes.
necessarily on the side. So it seems like being a nimble fish, working with other nimble fish, might
Mm.
be might be a better way to
Yes.
might be a better way to go, to say the least. And I want to know, how do we start, in companies, tech companies, blockchain
Mm-hmm.
companies, crypto
Mm-hmm.
companies, how do we start teaching that again? I think maybe the art of compassion is something maybe we all need to relearn again, because
Yes.
and it might not be necessarily people's faults. It's, things are moving so fast. There's less
Mm-hmm.
resources. There's more problems nowadays. Uh,
Yes.
so people, I think, under that much stress are really looking inward, not in a good way. How do I get at it? How do I preserve myself through
Mm-hmm.
this process? And it seems like maybe in easier times, maybe it's easier for people also to be more helpful. Things are
Mm-hmm.
calmer, things are kind of, let's say, a bit steadier. You're able to relax. I see somebody who needs help. You know what? Let me just go over there and help. And you look at kind of now, everything kind of seems like a pressure
Mm-hmm.
cooker, because things are just so many problems nowadays. So, from a company point of view, and how do we start teaching people compassion again, so we can start building meaningful connections, so we can kind of start building a better society, starting in our own bubble, in our own company, and hopefully that spreads, and other people learn it too.
What you were saying refers to me. There's one research done. I don't remember the university. I don't remember the years, but there were two groups of students, and the other group of students was told that story of a good Samaritan,
Oh yes,
and
the
the
Good
other
Samaritan.
and
Yes.
the other group was not told. And then they go out, and then they are being told that okay, you need to be in the other building in 5 minutes. So, and then on the way there, the both groups, they see a man, suffering
Oh,
on the way. So, what do you think? Which group was helping?
that's incredible. The Good Samaritan group. I bet you that clicked in their head.
It didn't have any effect. What
Oh,
affected was that they were in hurry. Those
okay.
people who were told that they were in a hurry, they didn't stop and pause.
Wow.
And this is, I think, what we need: stop and pause. That's a simple way of paying attention. And intention actually directs our attention.
Right.
If we think like, okay, we're in a hurry, I must go, I must not pay attention to the outer world, then we don't notice. We don't
Sure.
stop by. So first of all, I think your question has answered itself. Because
Okay.
if you think already, I want to create more compassionate working place, you have that intention.
Sure.
So it directs you to look to the organization at different. This is what I do, as
Yes.
work.
Yes.
It directs you look at the system on a different level. It brings you to all the levels of the organization as well as the individual levels. It looks to you, how do you act? What is your intention? Is
Right.
there enough time? Because that is where the stress is created, when you have
Time.
those tasks and you don't have resources to do the
Right.
tasks, and you're in
Very
a
much so.
constant hurry. So the first question is to ask, are you really on a constant hurry?
Right.
Kind
That's
of
a
like,
very
yes.
good question. That's a very good point. I think many of us are conditioned that, we always have to be in a hurry, especially
Mm.
where Chris and I are, New York City and New York City area,
Mhm.
always in a rush. That's just the culture here ever since we were little kids. Wouldn't that be fair to say, Chris? Everything is a competition.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in New York, and then when I went to college, I went down to Florida, and it's a much slower environment down there. And I was just like, is this how people move? Like, everybody's just taking their time, very Latin culture, where I'll get to it when I get to it type of, you know, culture there. And it was just very a culture shock to me, that to see that, the Portugal and Spain more relaxed. They have a siesta during the day. It's not really, everybody in a rush. When you look at New York City or like Hong Kong or something like that, everybody's got somewhere to go, somewhere to be, and you just completely will pass by that, homeless person in the street and not even think twice about what they're going through or how they got there. It's because you're just focused on what you're doing. But yeah, I had a couple notes. I just, I know we're getting up to an hour here.
Take the floor,
I
Chris, by all
wanted
means.
to kind of, go back on some of what you were talking about when it comes to compassion within organizations, and it had me thinking about Toyota and what they do in their business practices. I forget the name of the particular practice they do, but
Kaizen? You talk about
Kaizen,
Toyota?
yes,
Kaizen, yeah.
something like that, where they make sure that all people are heard, and that everybody, like the instance that you gave with the cleaning lady and the mailboxes, and they have that type of culture that supports that. And if you look at Toyota, I mean, they have some of the best made cars in the world. They last forever. You can have a Toyota that has over 300,000 miles on it, because the people are giving their feedback on how they can improve every little piece, because every little piece counts. And I worked at the Ritz-Carlton, and they had a similar type of culture where they were ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, where they are very compassionate in the way that they approach things, in terms of, they had this thing called Mr. Biv, where anybody could report. So Mr. Biv was an acronym for mistakes, rework, breakdown, inefficiencies, and variances. And if an employee saw that, they had the ability to take a note and write it down and drop it in a box. So they felt that they were heard if they felt that there was something that could be improved, or they had a suggestion. And if you look at the Ritz-Carlton, it's because they empowered their employees to be able to feel like they're making a difference. And that was one of the reasons why I loved working there, is because of that and that compassion. So I just wanted to touch on that. We also spoke about the healthcare system, and that's just a complete misalignment of interest across the board, whether it's healthcare or social media. You said a key word there is money. It's all about the money when it comes to the healthcare. It's not really the best interest of the people. It's about the best interest of the stakeholders of the private corporations. And with social media, you have that issue with Facebook now, with nobody trusting them, because all of this information coming out that they, pit different groups against each other to get more ads and get more clicks. And that in itself is not compassionate. So they're having a horrible time with their brand, and all of these young people not going to it, and nobody really trusting Facebook or social media. Now they're rebranding as the metaverse, where they can show more connection, and you can see people in rooms and kind of feel them, rather than just this text world that they're going through. So they are realizing that what they're doing is detrimental to society. I don't know if the metaverse is going to necessarily save that, but they're exploring a different way where they can communicate more to try to convey the messages of compassion better, I think. But we'll see where that goes in terms of the money, interest, and incentives. And then finally, yes, you were talking about acts of kindness and good deeds being contagious, and if you do something, then the next person will do something. We've all seen those viral videos where you'll see somebody open the door for somebody, and then the person that had their door open for them, they tip or help out the old woman with their groceries, and kindness is contagious. It kind of when, like you said, when people stop and take the time to provide the kindness, others take notice, and it kind of it encourages and inspires others to do the same. And I completely resonated with that. And so those are the few of the things that I had from the conversation. I really think that the points that you brought were very valid. I think there's a lot of opportunity to bridge the gaps of those five senses with technology and communication. Right now, we just have that visual and audio. But I think that, as technology progresses and metaverses and VR, there'll be teams that focus on more of the compassion and kindness and social good of the technology rather than the incentive of just, how much money can I extract out of this technology, instead of what good does this technology bring to the world. So yeah. I know we're coming up on an hour. I don't know if you had any more questions, Adam, or wanted to wrap up.
No, I mean, this was a great episode. I learned so much today from you, Tarja. Most of our episodes tend to flow with blockchain and cryptocurrency and learning about the nuances and new things going on. But I always like to have people who are working in other parts of tech and with different backgrounds. You have a combined tech and psychotherapist background. I think that is such a great combination to have. And it's so needed today as well, because we're going so fast as a culture, but we're not really solving these problems, and people are getting unhealthier mentally and physically. These things really need to be examined closely. Otherwise, the fate of humanity in the near future is very, very uncertain, whether it's the United States or elsewhere. I would love to have you to come back on in a few months, actually, and perhaps we could even expand even further on this. But I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great episode. I learned so much. I'm going to be thinking about these things all weekend, and I'm definitely going to be keeping in touch with you over the next few months. I think this has given Chris and I also some good ideas, as we are a startup. And what is important is culture. And this is something Chris and I talk about a lot. We have, society, companies have to do things differently now. I think if there's any lesson to take from these past 2 years, the old way of doing things is not working anymore. It doesn't work. Compassion might be that missing link. That might be the missing gear in the machine right now. We need to bring the best out of people. And perhaps it starts with compassion. So those are my thoughts on that. Thank you so much, Tarja, for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me. And let's get on a call again.
Let's get on a call again soon. Absolutely. All right. I'll send you an email over the weekend then. Okay, Tarja? And we'll plan it out.
Completely fine. Yes.
Perfect. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Yes.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.